Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something profoundly intimate and, well, completely invisible. You're about to discover the hidden operating system running beneath literally every aspect of your human experience. We aren't just talking about generic health here. We're looking at the actual molecular, neurological, and physiological forces that dictate exactly how you feel, how you age, and honestly, who you are on a daily basis. So, what invisible biological forces are actually shaping your life every single day? It's the ultimate question, right? You might think your mood today is just a reaction to a frustrating email, or your fatigue is just a normal sign of getting older. But beneath the surface, there's this breathtakingly complex biological web pulling all the strings. Today, we're going to uncover how deeply interconnected your body truly is, and how one specific foundation, your sleep, triggers a cascade of consequences that touches everything from your emotional resilience to your cellular longevity. Take a look at these. You might recognize a few. Waking up totally exhausted, a sudden flash of emotional volatility, persistent brain fog, unexplained physical stress, or just a lingering heightened anxiety. Now, we usually view these as totally separate issues, right? Things to be fixed with different habits or maybe different pills. But they aren't random at all. They're basically synchronized warning lights flashing on the dashboard of your biological operating system. And it all kicks off the second your sleep architecture gets compromised. Which brings us to part one, the brain's emotional break. Let's start by zooming in on what actually happens inside your brain's emotional circuitry when you're deprived of rest. It's all about this incredibly delicate neurobiological balance between your primitive threat detector and your rational CEO. On one hand, you have your amygdala. That's the ancient emotional gas pedal of your brain. It generates fear, anger, and rapid-fire reactions. On the other hand, you've got your prefrontal cortex. Think of that as your highly evolved brake pedal, fully responsible for logic and impulse control. When you're well rested, these two work in absolute perfect harmony. But when you aren't, well, things change. After just a single sleepless night, your amygdala becomes up to 60% more reactive to negative emotional stimuli. Just think about that for a second. 60%. You are biologically primed for intense stress. Suddenly, a minor annoyance feels like a massive existential threat. And it's not because the world changed around you, but because your internal threat detection system is literally stuck in overdrive. And why does it get stuck in overdrive? It's due to a rather terrifying phenomenon known as functional decoupling. You see, without sleep, the prefrontal cortex literally severs its functional connectivity with the amygdala. The structural bridge between logic and emotion just vanishes. You haven't lost your mind, your brain has just temporarily lost its brakes, leaving your emotional gas pedal completely unchecked. The long-term cost of that structural collapse? It's staggering. For people suffering from chronic insomnia, the risk from major depression spikes tenfold. For anxiety disorders, it's 17 times higher. This perfectly illustrates why chronic insomnia isn't just some secondary symptom of psychiatric disease. No, it's an independent causal contributor that actively breaks down the networks required to maintain your mental health. But, as you'll see, emotional volatility is really just the first domino to fall. So what happens when this neurological stress bleeds into your body's physical chemistry? Let's dive into section 2, the silent inflammation loop. Here we start to see a self-amplifying cascade that can lock you into a state of chronic disease. First, psychological stress causes your immune cells to develop glucocorticoid resistance. Basically, they stop listening to calming signals. Then, your immune system starts pumping out pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like IL-6 and CRP. And here's the kicker. Those inflammatory markers travel straight back to the brain and physically destroy the continuity of your next night's sleep, which, you guessed it, just causes more stress. It is a vicious, self-feeding biological loop. But right here is where the science gets truly fascinating, and honestly, a little terrifying. It's called the curryenine pathway. This exposes a hidden biological mechanism where systemic inflammation literally steals the building blocks of your happiness. See, when your body is inflamed from poor sleep and stress, it takes tryptophan. That's the amino acid normally used to make your happy neurotransmitter serotonin. But instead of making serotonin, your body gets hijacked. It metabolizes that tryptophan into neurotoxic compounds that actually damage the brain. Basically, your body is sacrificing your mood to fight an invisible inflammatory war. And the real tragedy of this whole loop? Your body is actually trying to help. It pumps out cortisol to try and calm the inflammation down, but chronic stress makes your immune cells chemically deaf to cortisol's calming signals. So even with anti-inflammatory cortisol pleasant, the signal is just ignored. It's like the fire alarm is blaring, the sprinklers are on, but the fire just keeps burning, locking you in this persistent state of low-grade systemic inflammation. Now, what exactly happens when this inflammatory loop continues unabated over days, months, or even years? Let's look at Section 3, the cognitive aging cascade. This timeline right here is a stunning revelation of just how incredibly fast our biology deteriorates. Just one night of poor sleep, that ruins your mood, giving you that amygdala hyperreactivity. By night 3 of restricted sleep, systemic inflammation kicks in. Your CRP and IL-6 markers are significantly elevated, and by night 6, your glucose clearance slows down by 40%. Your metabolic profile literally mimics early-stage prediabetes. In less than a single week, you've moved from basic mood instability straight into a metabolic crisis. And if we really want to talk about a metabolic and inflammatory crisis, we absolutely have to look at obstructive sleep apnea. For the millions suffering from this, their sleep isn't just cut short. It's marked by intermittent hypoxia, which means repeated drops in blood oxygen saturation throughout the night. This nightly lack of oxygen doesn't just make you tired. It acts as a massive, violent stressor on your entire biological system, completely bypassing your body's ability to recover. When you look at the widespread devastation of that oxygen deprivation, it is seriously alarming. It's not just making you snore. In your heart, it's driving sympathetic nervous system overactivity, essentially keeping your body stuck in fight or flight mode while you're supposed to be resting. In the immune system, it triggers the NLRP3 inflammasome, which accelerates things like atherosclerosis. And in the brain, it's causing neuronal apoptosis, which is the literal death of brain cells, leading straight to cognitive decline. But the most crucial and frankly terrifying takeaway here is this. The cognitive decline caused by sleep apnea closely mimics the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease. The peripheral inflammation created by this nightly oxygen starvation can actually breach the blood-brain barrier. It silently accelerates neurocognitive aging. You are quite literally aging your brain at an accelerated rate every single night that this goes untreated. But hey, here is the profound beauty of understanding your body as one deeply interconnected system. If the downward spiral is all connected, well, the upward spiral of recovery is too. Welcome to Section 4, Rewiring Your Biological Destiny. Let's look at the master architecture of recovery. Every single stage of sleep has a vital, highly specific purpose. You've got light sleep for transition and maintenance, then deep sleep is all about your physical restoration. That's when your body clears out metabolic waste and repairs tissue. But it's REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, that acts as your overnight psychological therapy. That's the stage that dials down the reactivity of that emotional amygdala we talked about earlier. You know, this is honestly one of the most fascinating mechanisms in all of human biology. During REM sleep, your brain processes the emotional memories of your day, but it does so in a neurochemical environment completely devoid of the stress hormone noradrenaline. So you literally get to relive your emotional experiences stripped of their sharpest, most painful edges. By properly cycling through these sleep stages, your brain is actively reshaping how you feel about your memories, completely rescuing your emotional regulation for the next day. What's amazing is we can actually measure your capacity for this resilience right in your blood. Higher DHES levels serve as a biological buffer. If you have a high DHES to cortisol ratio, your body is incredibly resilient to stress. It basically prevents a few nights of fragmented, poor sleep from immediately turning into functional burnout. It's a true marker of restorative capacity and deep vitality. And the scientific possibility here is just incredibly empowering. Because all these systems are so tightly linked, early targeted interventions don't just fix one isolated issue, they rescue the entire operating system. Just making your sleep timing consistent dramatically reduces inflammatory markers. For sleep apnea, using CPAP therapy rapidly restores oxygen and hippocampal function. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, physically rewires the brain's hyperarousal. Even simple wind-down routines manually nudge your nervous system out of fight or flight and into profound rest mode. It all synthesizes down to one unavoidable truth, perfectly captured right here. You cannot have good emotional regulation without good sleep. You simply cannot outthink, outmedicate, or outwork a fundamental biological deficit. Rest isn't a luxury, guys. It is the foundational code required for your mind to process life, for your immune system to quiet down, and for your brain to adapt and flourish.
We absolutely have to stop looking at our bodies as just a collection of separate parts. Sleep, hormones, inflammation, mood, and cognitive aging, they are not separate files in a cabinet. They are one continuous, breathtaking biological loop. True health is simply the emergent result of these countless interconnected biological processes occurring every single moment of your life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative question. When you turn off the lights tonight, will you treat your daily habits as a bunch of tedious chores or as the master switches of your biological destiny? Because you are literally choosing how your brain will age, how your immune system will react, and how you will experience the world tomorrow. The only question left is, how will you flip those switches tonight?